Hi folks, it's Dave from FUZE. Welcome to another episode of FUZE News. I'm really excited to be bringing this one to you today. As you can imagine, it's about the new patch. So if you look at the bottom corner of the screen, this one down here, you can see that the version number is 3.0.0. It's quite a big jump of version numbers, but there's lots of stuff in this patch, and it's a really nice sort of complete version of FUZE with some really much needed functionalities. So without further ado, let's get into what this patch brings to the table. So the first thing to do whenever there's a new FUZE patch is to check out the help section in the main menu just here. So if you just go to this, press A on the Joy-Cons, and you want to look at this latest updates folder here on the left. If we go into this, we've got the latest version 3.0.0 changes, all documented here on the right. I was already on that document, so it didn't seem to change. But yeah, I'll flick between a couple. You can see that we are now on the latest 3.0.0 changes. And this is a comprehensive breakdown of everything in this patch. Now, of course, we won't be able to go over every single one of these things point by point, and guaranteed I will definitely forget to mention something here. So I'm going to try and be quite general. Just a few of these that might be of interest to people. The image editor now returns the correct color when using the color picker, which is extremely useful. That should make the image editor a bit more of a joy to use. Certainly I will be enjoying that fix. We now have a working ref keyword on all different types of data, where before in 2.15.0 it didn't work fully for all different data types like int, struct, vectors, etc., strings. And now it does work correctly in consistency. We've got a few error messages now that are different from before. Some errors being triggered in places where we might not have seen them before, which will make FUZE errors just a lot more easy to understand. Perhaps your program isn't behaving as exactly as you did expect, and these errors will hopefully make that easier to figure out. On the error message side of things, there is a really cool new feature called a stack trace, which just gives you a little readout of the recent lines of code that were executed on the error screen. So the error screens will be much more helpful now, hopefully for everybody. Just looking over this list, like I said, there's really too many to cover each one, but have a look at all the bug fixes and see if that bug that was just getting on your nerves is addressed in this one. If it's not, I do apologise. Of course, we can only do so much with a patch, and there will be many more bug fixes to come. So as always, if you do find any bugs or you discover something isn't working properly, leave a comment down below. Best thing to do would be to go to the FUZE Arena forum, and you can post on our bug reporting section there. Either there or the Discord is fine too. Okay, so that about covers the bug fixes. Let's get into some of the cooler, sort of flashy changes that I really want to demonstrate here. I'm very excited, as you might be able to tell. Just head into the program section here, and I'm going to open up a project, just any random project. This one is just something I've been working on recently. So first thing to note, there's a couple of very sort of surface level editor changes that are just quick to learn. The zoom functionality in the editor is now on a different control layout. It's no longer on L and R. Now zoom is hold down ZL and use the right stick to up and down, sort of zoom in and out. When you let go of ZL, you're back to just moving the camera. This zoom mechanic is exactly the same in the map and image editors. So it's just to add some more consistency to the zooming behavior all over the areas of FUZE, and actually it is a much more seamless and sort of streamlined way of zooming in and out. I much prefer it. But the reason that it's not on L and R anymore is because L and R now do some different things, and actually we can configure this. So I'll tell you what, I'll open the keyboard first, because this is our first port of call, really. When you open the keyboard, you might see straight away that we've got a lovely new pixel art keyboard theme, which is very, very fetching indeed. I really like the look of this. I think it's really cool. And even though it makes no impact whatsoever to the programs, it does add something, I think. It's really nice looking. Anyway, I'll stop gushing over that. This new keyboard has a couple of changes. So you can see that there are some button prompts over certain buttons. So like enter, you've got the Y button, backspace, you've got the B button here. X for space, etc., etc. Now, the more observant amongst you might realise that this button here is now different to what it used to be. In the old version of FUZE, this was a run button, which you could use when you're in the handheld switch mode to run your program from the touch keyboard. But it turned out to be a little bit redundant, because when you're holding your switch like this, you're right next to the plus button anyway, and to be honest, that tends to be everybody's go-to for running programs. And personally, and I know a few other people who were having this experience, we were hitting this button accidentally, and it was running the program when we didn't want it to, which meant that you had to go back to the plus button. Bit of a mess. So it's no longer the case. We have this nice menu button, and you can access this using ZL and clicking the left stick. And let's have a look at that menu. So we're sort of calling this the code editor functions menu, or the advanced editor functionalities menu. It's really a configurable list of some cool little features, and you might have already seen find, replace, quick find, show function. So these I'm super excited to tell you about. I know they've been massively anticipated. A lot of them are self-explanatory, right? So find, let's just do a quick demonstration. If I want to find all instances of a particular word in my program, let's say I want to find sprite. Oh, just swap the keyboard over there. Let's try and find all instances of the word sprite. Okay, cool. So we pressed the plus button, and now we're in this find view mode, where we've got all instances of our searched word highlighted with these little orange blocks, and you can use the L and R keys to move in and out of these, to move between them. When you are within one of these ranges, you can use your cursor arrows to move the cursor around still, but as soon as you move outside of the range, you will exit the find view mode. So that's how you enter and exit the find there. Find and replace, very, very similar, except with the replace part added on. So let's just do that. We're going to search for all instances of sprite and replace them with Dave. This should make our code a little bit more readable, I think. Let's have a look. We've got 17 matches. Let's get rid of all of those. There we go. Player equals create Dave. Set Dave image. Brilliant. This is update Dave's. See, now this is what programs should look like. This is way more understandable. There you go. Remove Dave. That's quite a useful function. Maybe we should call this one ourselves. Let's undo this change before it gets too silly with the undo hotkey command, which is exactly the same as always, just ZL and the R button there to undo, and we've just undone our changes. So that's find and replace. And quickly just go over this next one, quick find, very, very similar to find, except we don't need to enter a search term. So all we need to do is move the cursor to the word that we want to find, and my quick find is on L here. I'll just tap L, and look, we're now in all of the different instances of this found word player. So this is a really nice and easy way to just jump around your program. Hopefully these changes make navigating larger scale programs just infinitely more enjoyable. I'm really hoping that that these changes are enjoyed and appreciated, because personally I'm really excited about this one. The last one is the show function functionality. Just the show function thing. It's this one here. I've got it mapped to the R button right now. And how it works is we can show and jump to a function definition in our code from the place that we call it. So let's say we're in my program and I've forgotten where this stick moving function is here. This is a user function that I've made. It tells me whether the stick is moving. And if I press the show function button, which for me is R, it will just jump to my definition for that function. So this is super, super useful. And definitely for larger scale programs, I can see this really making a big difference. Another cool little feature of this is that if you're on a FUZE function, for example, length, rather than a user function like stick moving, if we're on this one and we press the R button, the show function will actually bring up the help page for that function. Now that is pretty cool. I'm very happy with that one. So you can use show function on your own functions to jump around your program, or to just remind yourself of some parameters on a function that you're calling. Right, so that is all of that. And actually, yeah, last thing before I forget is that you can change the assigned keys for these functionalities, even the ones that don't have options here, by just hovering over them and pressing the button that you want. You've got 4 options. You've got the left stick click, right stick click, L and R, and by just pressing one of them on here, look, we can configure them how we like. Personally, I actually quite like them as they are in their default view, because these are the same as always, and I'm quite used to this setup already. So see what you think. Find the button configuration that works best for you, and I really hope that you enjoy these changes. So the next part about the patch, which I would like to discuss, is a more significant change, which will affect a couple of programs. Now, before we get into it, I just want to put this caveat in place. I want to just put this in place first. If you download the patch and you are seeing some unexpected behavior in your programs, for example, things aren't quite looking like they're in the right place, and this will be the case if you've used sprites in your program, which is a very common thing to actually use, so this will affect a few programs. If you are seeing things in the wrong place, all you need to do is add a single line of code to your program at the very top, and that is set compatibility. That's not how you spell that, Dave, is it? Compatibility. There we go. And this single function will revert some of the changes that we've made to ensure that your program behaves exactly as it did in the last version of FUZE. So this will allow you to not have to worry about what the change is. Of course, we're going to explain that change in a second, but this will get your programs working immediately without having to, concern yourself with going through and finding all different things out. It should be a really simple change anyway, but this is in place just for total ease of use. So if we put our old version number in here, 2.15.0 in speech marks like that, make sure it's the first function that you call in your program, and it will behave exactly as it did in 2.15.0. Now, this is very helpful, but if you want to understand exactly what this change is that we are reverting, then stick around, because it's actually a really simple one. It just has quite a drastic visual effect. And it's a tricky one to understand, and there's a lot of reasoning behind it. So if you'll permit me to if you'll indulge me for a second. We noticed that not many users in FUZE are using the sprite camera system combined with the map editor and drawing maps and sprite system in the way that we sort of envisaged originally. And we think that this is because we sort of made a couple of mistakes in implementation that meant that certain things weren't unified and not consistent. And so we've rectified this. Now, you might not have realized something before, which is certainly something that I had to wrap my head around. And so hopefully I'll make that clear here. Whenever you use sprites in FUZE, regardless of whether or not you use the sprite camera, as soon as you use create sprite and you give that sprite an X and Y position, you are positioning that sprite in what's called map coordinates. It's a sort of hypothetical space, which is not restricted by the screen dimensions. And so you're positioning your sprite there, and the sprite camera is just positioned so that it is looking at a section of this game world. So imagine that our whole code editor screen here is our game world, and my camera little head section here that I'm moving around, this is our sprite camera, right? So our map world coordinates are always the same, but as we move our camera around, we're changing our perception of this game world. We're bringing some of it into view, and we're changing what we can see. But moving this around doesn't change the game world coordinates. They are always the same. Now, in the map editor, the game world position 0, 0 is represented as a pair of intersecting blue lines. And most often is the case that you will use these lines as the center of your world, and then you can sort of build out from this center. But the sprite camera was positioned in FUZE by default so that center point of your game world appeared in the top left of your screen because it maps onto the screen coordinates. But this then led to a bunch of inconsistencies in terms of how the maps are drawn and the sprite camera rotates and moves around. So there are quite a few fixes in this regard. The sprite camera has been moved, and it is now center-centric. So what do I mean by center-centric? Let's just go back to my example of my head being the sprite camera, or my head box being the sprite camera, okay? When we position the sprite camera, and we give it an X and Y location, we are positioning the center point of that camera. So where my nose is here, this is what we're positioning, right? You're putting my nose in a position, and then it's moving everything else. So if I move the center point of the camera left or right for you, I'm not sure, we'll be moving like this, and it's talking about the center point all the time. Now this is really the big change, because in the old version of FUZE it was talking about this top left position, just here, yeah, the top left position. Now this is inconsistent because sprites use a center point origin, as do maps and all sorts of different things with the sprites system, but the camera didn't. So this has now been changed. When you call set sprite camera, this function right here, when you call this function, you are, beg your pardon, didn't mean to open that up. When you call this, you are setting the center point of the sprite camera. And so this really says position the center point of our sprite camera at map coordinates 0, 0, which will put that intersecting line pair in the map editor right in the middle of our screen. This is now how it is by default in FUZE. So if you're seeing some strange behavior and you don't want to use set compatibility because you want to understand the change and make sure that it's all working in a way that you fully understand, really all you'll have to do is this. Set sprite camera and just use your half width and height coordinates for your screen dimensions. So if you are using the switch coordinates, 1280 by 720, you would put 640, 360 in here, and this effectively is doing the exact same job as this. Now if you've got sprite camera rotation happening in your program, then merely changing the camera position will not address that. Set compatibility will. It will revert the behavior back to the 2.15 behavior for rotation, but it's really not the way that we wanted it to work. Now the sprite camera rotates around that center point. So we really hope that these changes make the whole sprites, map editor and sprite camera system more unified, more consistent, more intuitive, more accessible and easy to pick up. Right, now for a list of everything that I've just said, of course, you know, maybe I might have missed something in this explanation, I'm sure I have. We have also updated the documentation in regard to sprites in a really big way, and I'm really quite happy with this change. So I'd like to direct you back to the help section of FUZE, and we're going to go to command reference. And in this command reference part here is a new document called sprite system. And this document will hopefully serve as a repository for all information pertaining to sprites. You've got here a nice and easy, thoroughly broken down explanation of the sprites, the sprite camera, the maps, collision with sprites, sprite properties, all sorts of different things. Basically anything sprites, it's here, and it's hopefully nicely explained with some pictures. So you've got a nice visual representation of what I was just talking about with the sprite camera, with some nice pixel art as well to make it a little bit more easily digestible. So hopefully this is very useful. And it goes without saying that I do not take these sorts of changes lightly, and neither does the FUZE team. Whenever a change like this is made, it is made after much deliberation and discussion, where we really do try to weigh up as much as we can on either side. So frankly, FUZE is in quite a strange position when it comes to this stuff, because by virtue of the application itself, because it's a programming application, whenever we want to make a fix or a change that brings FUZE more in line with the overall ethos and accessibility ideas that we had in mind to begin with, and where we didn't quite get something right originally, but perhaps people have found some workarounds, we're in a very tough spot, because it's like, do you address the workarounds? You know, do you remove those, or do you actually fix the problem so that it's the right way to begin with? And so it's always a difficult one, and we really hope that this set compatibility function is the answer to any sort of difficulty in transitioning between these two versions. And the compatibility will be supported for quite some time. Eventually, some point in the future, we may decide to remove the compatibility for old versions, but of course this will be done with plenty and plenty of warning and support. And that's the last part that I want to get to. If you are struggling to understand these changes, you have questions regarding the sprite system, maps, camera, you've got a program that you're not quite sure how to fix, maybe, you know, you just want some more clarity on a few things I've said here, by all means, leave a comment, get in touch on FUZE Arena, feel free to hop on the Discord and send me a message. I'm very responsive to these things, and I really do mean it when I say that I will personally help you fix your program if that's what it takes to get your program back up and running, and it really shouldn't be that much of a difficult one to do, as I showed you before with the set sprite camera. So that about covers it. I really hope that these changes make the whole experience of using FUZE just that little bit better, especially those like code editor features like find and replace. Just got a low battery here. That's not very good, is it? Let's just connect that back up. Okay, so with all that said and done, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and a comment if you feel so inclined. Feel free to subscribe. That would be absolutely awesome. Feel free to leave a dislike if you didn't like anything I've said in this video, or you don't agree with what we've done, but you must show you're working. You have to tell me why you don't like something, otherwise we can't use it to improve anything. So right, hopefully we'll get some appreciation for these changes. We're really excited about it, and I really look forward to seeing everybody on the future game jams and FUZE tutorial videos that are coming. With all that done, I've been Dave. Thank you so much. You're an awesome community. Just as ever, I'm bowled over by the creativity, the support, just the kindness and compassion. It is definitely what this is all about. So thanks so much. Have a lovely day, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.